If you're one of the many millions of people that told themselves, "But Ancestry.com said they would never sell my data. It says it right here in their terms of services," then don't worry, you're not the only one that got screwed. When online genealogy services like Ancestry first came onto the scene in the 1990s, everyone was excited about how much they could find out about themselves and about one's family history. Do I actually belong to royalty? Am I actually a descendant of Genghis Khan? Is my dad actually my dad? These were some of the questions that prompted millions of people to pay money and send their precious DNA to a company hoping for answers. What most people don't realize is the lack of safeguards regarding what Ancestry and other such companies do with your data. Even till this day, a worrying amount of people enthusiastically submit their information to these sites and live on completely unaware that their data is being passed around. This isn't the consumer's fault necessarily. Although companies love to talk about being transparent and open, this is literally what the terms and conditions of Ancestry looks like. As you can see, it's more than 10 pages of text in a tiny font size, purposely making it hard for you to read. And companies know that 99.99% of their customers do not check this at all. I mean, who wants to read that boring text when they are actively diverting your attention away by dangling discoveries of your potential royal heritage advertised on the front page? I mean, this is literally the best business model ever. You pay them to give them your DNA, which they'll use for alternative profitable purposes. You're basically paying them to give them money. But is your data actually safe? More and more regularly, we see sites like Ancestry getting busted for doing nefarious things with your DNA data that they totally promised they would never do. The first way that Ancestry tries to trick you is one of the oldest tricks in the book. Before mentioning prices or putting a dollar sign anywhere, they will lure you in with a series of questions to get you interested. Once you have answered enough to get you hooked, the website will say you can get a free trial with FREE capitalized, and then the honest truth about the large bill in 2 weeks' time. Well, that's somewhere hidden in a tiny font in the fine print on a part of the site where you have to squint your eyes to read. Whilst there have been multiple cases of genealogy sites caught selling data when they shouldn't be, Ancestry does it in ways that are totally legal and completely deniable. When Blackstone announced in 2020 that they bought Ancestry from Silver Lake for $4.7 billion, concerns especially grew. I mean, anyone with an IQ above room temperature can see that the multi-billion-dollar evaluation of the DNA collecting company is literally based on the fact that they are holding hundreds of millions of dollars worth of people's private information. So, didn't Ancestry.com technically just legally sell your data to Blackstone during this acquisition? And to Blackstone, the company with one of the worst business practices in history. This was the company that was ordered to repay fund investors $28.9 million and received a $10 million fine by the SEC for failure to disclose the collection and handling of fees that should have been used to benefit investors. Also, the United States isn't the only place where this company has been busted for doing something illegal either. Officials in Czech Republic, Denmark, Ireland, Spain, and Sweden have all accused Blackstone and its subsidiaries of undertaking aggressive evictions on low and middle-income tenants. As you can see, this clearly isn't a firm that has people's rights on the top of its priority list. I mean, the Ancestry website can claim all day long that the data is kept within the Ancestry company group and is not passed on to any third parties, but this isn't exactly an industry that can be trusted with such matters, especially when they just paid billions of dollars for it. But it's not just Ancestry.com that you need to worry about. There's very little regulatory oversight in terms of how any of these sites handle your genetic data. The current laws on the matter, which are very narrow in scope, primarily focus on employers and insurancers not being allowed to access the information. This is undoubtedly an important start, but things will need to go much further until people's data are actually safe. Such companies can't be trusted to act responsibly purely out of goodwill. It's not just a lack of government involvement, which may end up being a concern, though. From the other end of things, there is a huge pool of intricate data that governments both domestically and abroad will want to get their hands on. In some cases, this might be for genuinely helpful reasons, such as catching criminals. But let's say it, they always say that they're breaching your privacy for your own protection. Especially in the age of Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks, where people are increasingly aware of how intrusive the government is and how closely we're monitored, having our genetic data out there can be a scary thought. Not only do people need to worry about mergers between gene testing companies and tyrannical corporations, but they should also be worried about collaboration between gene testing companies and tyrannical governments. Gene testing companies have been working with the government for a few years now, in fact. In 2018, a serial murderer and rapist was tracked down 30 years after his crimes by police using GED match data. Joseph James D'Angelo, who was arrested shortly after, hadn't even signed up for a gene testing service. Because members of his family tree had signed up, he could still be tracked. This may sound like a good ending, but things don't always turn out so well. For example, in 2014, police used familiar searching with data from Ancestry.com in an attempt to solve the murder of Angie Dodge, which happened in 1996. Michael Usry Sr. had once contributed a DNA sample to the Sorensen Molecular Genealogy Foundation. The foundation was later acquired by Ancestry. When Idaho Falls authorities obtained a court order to search the combined Ancestry DNA database, they were led to Michael Usry Sr. The DNA data logged on Ancestry matched very closely with the DNA the police had previously obtained, indicating that Angie Dodge's murderer would be within 3 or 4 generations of Usry Sr. Now, because the son, Usry Jr., was a filmmaker whose pieces often had a dark nature, police pinned him as a prime suspect. He was accused of the murder, and police interrogated him, but it was later found this DNA from his saliva was not a complete match with the sample found at the murder. Unsurprisingly, he later claimed that the investigation was a severe breach of his and his father's privacy. So, what does this tell us? You don't even need to have signed up to Ancestry to be at risk from genetic investigation. It's one thing to be tricked into signing up yourself, but it's a completely different thing when your relatives breach your privacy because of the nature of the data they are providing. Gene testing companies are likely to defend this collaboration with the government for as long as they can. They're going to tell you it's for your own protection, and they need to share your data to catch criminals out there. Of course they are going to tell you this. Because if you believe them, then you're likely to help them make more money by not having the government implement stricter regulation. Regardless of what the stated intentions are of these companies, when they paint the picture of your data as safe, they are still lying. This is the case even if they were 100% above board and did nothing illegal whatsoever. You see, there's the problem of something they can't control: getting hacked or employees going rogue. This isn't something which can be guaranteed against. In fact, this is already happening to MyHeritage. 92 million accounts from the company were found on a private server in 2018. Remember, the company itself can be completely legit and not do anything naughty, and your data will still be compromised. So imagine what would happen to your DNA information if it were owned by a company with a track record of ethics violations for pure profit. That brings us back around to Blackstone, who spent $4.7 billion to buy Ancestry. As interesting as finding out one's family history may be to some people, this huge valuation wasn't reached by predicting an endless influx of customer money. Where the real value lies is in the data that can be sold to other businesses for things like targeted ads and other marketing interests. Or, more worrisome, to governments that want to do things that may or may not be morally questionable. If Ancestry really wanted to provide a fascinating insight on you, they'd tell you how much money they could generate from an average DNA kit that you sent into them. As we've seen with Blackstone in the past, the company sees no moral barrier as insurmountable when it comes to making a profit. If they're already completely okay with physically kicking poor people out of communities and effectively making people homeless, if they're perfectly okay with overcharging their existing clients and ripping them off face to face, do you think suddenly the terms and conditions written on a website will prevent them from using the data in ways that you don't even know about? Who are we kidding here? How can people be expected to trust such a company when it says your data is deleted whenever you want it to be? Why would they willingly delete the main value in the business they've just spent billions of dollars on? Even if they did get forced into deleting your data one day, we've already seen that data breaches can happen, and it could already be out on another server. What history has consistently shown us is that large corporations go absolutely crazy with power and have no interest in defending things like your privacy if it means they can make a quick buck. We saw with the case of Michael Usry Jr., you personally don't even need to agree yourself to appear on their database. If someone in your family was charmed by an Ancestry.com advert, you may find yourself being interrogated by police after they raid your data and find some art of yours that makes them feel a bit scared. Until it's clear how this data can ever be managed responsibly, if that's even possible at all, the smart thing to do would be to stay clear of giving up such private information in the first place. In an age where data is more valuable than oil, people consistently being tricked into giving it up so easily is going to be seen regretfully a few years down the line. Not only is it potentially invasive of your privacy, but it's also a financial scam. When people begin to realize just how much their data is worth, they'll stop paying companies to take it from them. It'll be the other way around. Until we get some better answers about our data's safety and some better offers for its value, the best thing to do is steer clear.